Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Data Access, I would like to welcome you all to the first edition of Nextv Content Distribution Africa. The content ecosystem is made up of a number of parties regrouping key players that are dependent on each other. And today's conference will help us understand this ever-changing industry. Before getting into the core discussion, I would like to thank our sponsors, Deutsche Welle, TVU Networks, and France 24. Without further ado, let's look at today's agenda. We will start the session just shortly after my quick speech on the free-to-air satellite distribution with the COO of Multi-TV and also the founder of Africa XP. And at 11:10, we will have a discussion with the Deutsche Welle crew, where we will have a panel discussion on the new content and new focus, how Africa inspires the globe with culture and creativity. Before lunch, we will head into the financing and funding of African content. And then just after lunch, we will see the monetization of local content on the digital platforms in Africa. Finally, we will also welcome the representative from Channels TV, RTI, and Deutsche Welle, and as well as SABC for a very insightful discussion on the rise of international TV channels in Africa. And we'll conclude today's webinar or conference with the African content, how to compete with international SVOD platforms. So, I have the pleasure to welcoming once again with us Rhys Torrington from Tiguana Media, who will be our moderator today, as well as Ken Ansah from Multimedia Group and Craig Kelly from Africa XP. So Rhys, over to you for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you very much, Shana, and good morning to everybody. And for those of you who saw the advance information, who are expecting to see Ian Platchers today as well from SABC, he sends his apologies, but he's really quite ill at the moment, so isn't able to take part. But the good news is both Ken and Craig are with us, and from past experience, I know they've got lots to say. So now they've got a lot more elbow room, they can take up Ian's space as well. So let me ask them to quickly introduce themselves. Ken, you're at the top of my screen, so why don't you introduce yourself? And by the way, you've already won the prize for best shirt of the day.
Thank you, Rhys, and good morning to everyone. I'm Ken Ansah. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Multimedia Group, the largest private media operator in Ghana, with assets and platforms in radio, television, and also an expansive footprint on social media and on digital generally. Yeah.
And Craig, I can't imagine that there's anybody in the audience that doesn't know you, but give it a go anyway. But come off mute.
Thanks, Rhys. Yes, I'm the founder of Africa XP. We are television content distributors. We are builders of linear thematic television channels, which we have traditionally licensed to pay platforms initially, and then multi-channel platforms in general. We have also launched our own free-to-air platform on satellite in Africa. We're currently on 3 different satellites in sub-Saharan Africa. The name of the platform is Premium Free, and it is transmitted free to air. We're also about to launch a global version of Premium Free on OTT, as well as a white label OTT service that will deliver our channels and other channels into third-party OTT platforms together with monetization. Yeah, both digital, traditional broadcast and licensed content and services are things that we run.
Great, thanks for that, Craig. And let's keep with that thought, and we'll come back to it a bit later, because you're clearly hedging your bets here a little bit with going OTT as well as DTH. But we'll come on to that strategy a bit later. But Interestingly enough, in you two guys and in your companies, Africa XP, Premium Free, and also with Ken's Multi-TV, we're looking at people who have survived, and yet, as we all of us know, the graveyard's littered with DTH companies that have been and gone. They sparkle for a couple of years and then disappear. Why is it you're still here? Craig, why don't you answer that question first? What have you done right? Despite what everybody thought about you, how is it you succeeded?
I think if you look at the platforms that have failed, they had expectation of having much quicker penetration than they achieved. And so they had business plans that showed quite good revenue streams in 3 years. And so they structured their costs to match those revenue projections that then weren't materialized. And that's part of the problem, is that in Africa, you're dealing with multiple countries, cultures, regulatory environments, and so on and so forth. And so those have been problematic. I think the secret to our staying power has been that we have at every turn sought to find the lowest possible cost mechanism to deliver our services. And in doing so, we have sought partnerships. So we have engaged with content owners substantially on revenue share and in a partnership kind of a way. We have been very creative in terms of how we've engaged with the satellite companies. We've spoken to them about how they feel frustrated that their clients have tended to fail, and we've said we need to look at new and different, more market appropriate ways of moving forward. And I think that's given us the runway to stay in the game while we solve the problems. But also, some of the problems are not problems you can solve. They are factors of the market evolving, and you have to be in the market as it evolves, and you need that runway. So,
and you've managed to do this always as free to air, haven't you? You've never been tempted to charge. I mean, I know you provide content to other people, but you're free to air.
Yeah. Well, we very much back the free to air, and yeah, I mean, when I started going to international television markets and making revenue share proposals, people kind of laughed at me. But we got traction with that model, and I think that now it's not an outrageous model anymore. If you look at the international AVOD platforms and FAST platforms like Zuma and Pluto. So yes, we think the growth opportunity is in free to air. The pay space is crowded, and I think that OTT provides the ability of the strong international players to roll out across the world fairly easily with less barriers than previously. And so I think that it would be very difficult to be charging a lot in this space. But I do also think that specifically within the OTT environment, blended services will become possible. It is, in my view, impossible to roll out another pay platform in Africa if you are relying on selling service-specific set-top boxes. But on OTT, it's a different proposition if a single channel, for example, were to be a pay channel, because people are not necessarily buying a box and they're using equipment that they already own to access that. They're paying through third-party mechanisms. And if that is bundled on top of, say, a pay platform or in conjunction with other media services, then I think it's viable. So we will do a full circle, I think, and see standalone pay services actually finding their niche.
But that point you raised there about being able to use equipment that they've already got, that isn't just true of the OTT players, is it? Because in fact, I think Premium Free relies quite a lot on the fact that people have already bought equipment for other use. So the setup cost of joining your club is zero.
That's exactly it. I mean, let's take an example of Kwese, which was, very well funded and had great content and, lots of noise around them and so on and so forth. Then, in my opinion, the primary constraint that they had was that they had to distribute a lot of set-top boxes in many different countries in order to get a subscriber base that was going to cover their operating costs. And people underestimate that task. And I think if you look at, I haven't seen their business plan, obviously, but if you take into consideration the fact that MultiChoice launched DSTV in 1993, I think it was, and outside of South Africa, they have 8 million homes. How many subscribers, how many set-top boxes have you moved per year if you just divide it in a linear fashion? You can't get 5 million subscribers in 3 years or whatever. You know, it's not possible to achieve that. And so that's why we said the only way for us to provide a multi-channel service in sub-Saharan Africa is for us to be able to put that service on a platform that is already receivable by a very substantial pre-existing base of people who already, you know, who have equipment installed. And that brings all sorts of frustrations. You don't control your box, you don't control your EPG, you can't add pay services, you can't necessarily order the channels. There are all sorts of problems associated with that. But the bottom line is that there are people in the market who can instantly engage with your content. And for me, that, you know, that's the game changer. And obviously, we've seen that MBC has facilitated the same thing in North Africa and the Middle East.
Yeah.
There are 1,000 free-to-air channels available at 7 or 8 degrees west. And it's a function of the fact that they took that step and placed that entertainment bouquet on satellite in the market. You know, I think, you know, multi-TV has done the same thing in West Africa substantially, and they're also still in the game, you know, so.
Absolutely. In fact, Ken, I was just going to ask you that question because Craig's sounding a very optimistic note about the future of FTA, not just satellite distribution, but free to air, which is great because that speaks to the title of the session. Is it possible to reach new audiences in Africa? So given where you've come from and where you want to go, are you sharing Craig's optimism, Ken?
Indeed, to a large extent, I share in that optimism. I think for a successful FTA, there are certain moving parts that are always, you know, cranking, and you know, you need a robust infrastructure and service provider on the back, which is giving you the technology base that helps you move forward. You need also a system that is ensuring that your set-top box is always available, and you know, if where there is churn, you are replacing effectively, and you have a system of driving new boxes into homes. And layered on that is content that people find exciting and, you know, get them engaged, that bring them to the platform always and always. And so when you look at the technology side for multi-TV, we have the SES satellite, and you know, SES is robust in this place. We have an uplink service provider that is #1 in the region. And we have been driving content over the past 11, 12 years on the platform. When Multi started with 10 channels, you know, and had to now use that to drive boxes into homes, it did work because it was the first time, and people having multiple channels free to air once you buy a single box, you know, it was very exciting. And that helped drive boxes up to the point where in Ghana, we have over 4.5 million boxes in homes. I mean, if you take TV households of just above 6 million, and you have 4.5 million in-home boxes with DTH, then that is a huge success story. But you don't see that dying down. You know, you see it increasing. Every month, box sales are going in there and people are buying boxes. But it's also driven by the fact that new channels come onto the platform. Now you have about 120 channels on the platform. And so it gives a variety of content to audiences. And because you have that number of channels on a single box, they don't have to buy multiple boxes to get the kind of content variety they need. So by that, they get hooked or stayed to that single box. So then it becomes a matter of who is providing the most compelling and competitive content, who is giving the audience the kind of content they need to stay onto the platform. And that is where we are. Are we seeing new people who are buying boxes? Yes. Do we see places where we are not and we can be? Yes. There are so many places where multi-TV isn't available yet. And we know that we have the opportunity to go into those spaces. For instance, timely, when the lockdown, just before the lockdown, we have launched a channel, a learning channel. And, you know, the lockdown kept kids at home. And although we didn't foresee the lockdown coming, it kind of fit into it perfectly. And that again brought in another wave of box purchase because kids were at home and they needed to catch up with studies and all those. So yes, FTA has that opportunity to even grow beyond where it is today. But the other question is the economic model. I guess we'll get to that because it must be fed. You know, you need to feed the content, you need to feed the technology, you need to feed everything around it. And that must be fed with cash. How do you generate cash as an FTA to get that process going so that you can expand further and further?
Well, you've asked the question. Do you want to try answering it? Because obviously you've started doing it quite well.
Well, I would say it is mixed when it comes to that bit. On one hand is the fact that for the audience at home or wherever they consume content on DTH, free to air, variety is key to them. And they want to consume as much as they can in that 24-hour period. And one media house can't provide that. And so a lot of other media houses or media operators channels have come onto the platform to give that variety, making the platform robust and competitive and leading as it has become. The other side, however, is that it is splitting eyeballs. And so for advertisers, they have to go through a long list of channels to decide on where to place adverts. So when you're an operator on that platform, then you must compete very fiercely for an advertiser's box. And that is where then feeding that economic model then becomes a huge task. At Multi, I would say we are doing it excellently, but I don't think we're doing bad at all. We are trying to every day provide content that is compelling and aggregating the audience that advertisers will tap into and give us some revenues. But of course, when you look at that number of channels, also on the other side is social media and digital media competing for advertiser revenue, then it splits up advertising spend quite thinly. And
yeah, I mean, I think to me, this is one of the critical issues here, Ken, is where you get a hold of the money, because on the one hand, it sounds phenomenal to say, well, we can offer 120, 130 channels. But then, yeah, as you say, from an advertiser's point of view, where on the roulette wheel are you going to place your money? You've no real idea, given also the state of audience measurement in most of sub-Saharan Africa. There's no obvious way of knowing who's watching which channel. So could you be contentious and say 120 is far too many? Do you really want to eat in a restaurant with 120 items on the menu? So what's your view on that? Is 120 too many, about right? Not enough?
I would say so I'll put myself in a couple of positions. As a viewer, even that, I would say 120 is far too many, because I mean, how many channels can you really run through and consume content effectively and stay well on a certain channel for a certain critical number of minutes, to make the case to an advertiser. And so, yes, 120, far too many, quite a huge duplication of channels and content on the platform. On an operator's point of view, it is also far too many, unnecessary competition. And so when, you have to cut through a huge number of channels to get your content out. If you do it right, you stand out. And we try to do that every day. But then also from an advertiser point of view, 120 channels, way too much. Where do I put the money? And behind this is the need for robust data to guide you on which channels are leading, serving which demographics, so you can put advertising there. Unfortunately, again, as we've learned in the recent past, such robust data that will guide advertising decision isn't available in the market. So it even makes things a bit more complex, So yes, platform-wise, we can see we have a robust platform. It is growing every day, but there are issues around it that need to be tidied up to make it competitive and optimal for the operator and even for the advertiser as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know at a session later on today, we're going to be examining a bit more the issues about audience measurement, because Craig, I think sitting in South Africa, at least you've got the semblance of some decent audience measurement, but it's difficult elsewhere. But just before we go to that, there was one question from the audience that the question was really, as you're building this DTH empire of yours, is there a favored satellite provider or a favored bird even that you use? I know you're using 3 different platforms, Craig. Is that because you want to spread your bets, or do they serve different purposes?
Well, let me start off answering that question from the perspective of being a free-to-air satellite provider, because it's a different one to answering it from a pay provider. If you are free-to-air, if you're on a satellite that doesn't have a lot of dishes already oriented towards that orbital position, then you are not in the game, because you have to get people to move their dishes or to install an additional dish in order to be able to consume your content. So as a free-to-air satellite broadcaster, you have to put your channels on satellites that have a pre-existing audience, or be very, very patient and have very big marketing to get people to move. And so that is obviously informed our choice of satellites. IS-20 has by far the biggest pre-existing audience in sub-Saharan Africa of any satellite. And then Eutelsat 16A is very, very strong in Francophone region. So that's why those are very important satellites for us. And then 7B, it has some areas of great strength and covers everywhere, which we love about it. It covers Indian Oceans, it's strong in Tanzania, and so on. So
without getting into the commercials, do you find the suppliers of that capacity amenable to working with you, or do they see you as being the bargain basement, the free-to-airs that not able to stump up the same sort of cash as the pay operators?
The satellite operators that we're presently working with, we've worked with a number of operators. The partners that we presently have, that being Eutelsat and Intelsat, could not have been more supportive in terms of understanding our business model and wanting to create a new, more successful model. So I just feel extremely lucky to be dealing with the people that I'm dealing with, and having the fact that they've been through it. They've been through people buying capacity and not paying for it time and time again. And they have said, yeah, your thinking is right. We can see that this is working so well in North Africa and the Middle East. We need to replicate the same model. We love your content. You speak about number of channels, and number of channels is not really an issue if there are lots of the same channel. The question is, what channels have you put up? Do you have a blend of thematics? Are you covering all the target markets? Ken spoke about the extent to which an educational channel really sold boxes. Okay. Do people want telenovelas? Yes. All the pay operators know that people subscribe in school holidays so that they can have the kids channel. So you need to cover those programmatic bases. I haven't even mentioned sport, football, you know. If you put the right blend of channels there, then I think that will cut through the clutter. You know, you can't control the number of channels on a satellite, but you can control your own bouquet, and you can control the quality and the packaging of the channels within your own bouquet.
How do you go about deciding what that content mix should be? Maybe I could ask you this one first, Ken, because you've obviously been successful in your marketplace. What are the parameters that drive your content? Because, you know, I've come more from a pay TV background where simplicity was it's football plus something else to fill up the 5 days when there isn't any football on television. That isn't really much of a content strategy, as I found out to my cost. How do you go about it?
Well, some research has been helpful. What you see generally is that people like entertainment, and some research that was done 2 years, 3 years ago says, look, people want 82% or so want entertainment content, and that includes sports and everything, you know, in the space of drama and series and all those, with about 22%, a bit of an overlap there, who say they want news and current affairs. So that bit of research is also then backed by what you see in the market. So when you settle out, then that becomes a guiding principle to set out. But within the entertainment content, we also know that realities are strong, sports very, very strong and dominant, and then you have the telenovelas and the dramas in there as well about that. So that becomes the broader framework that guide in, you know, setting out the content. And as Craig said, you know, you can't do 120 channels of the same thing, or even 10 channels of the same thing. So how well are you positioning your content to meet the key demographics that you believe your target advertisers want to tap into? But again, as I said, entertainment seems to cut across from all age groups, from top to down, news and current affairs somewhere in the middle. And what you see is that the younger generation tend to be consuming news and current affairs on social media platforms than on linear TV. So when you're doing news and current affairs on linear TV, then what is your target audience, and who are you looking to address?
And I'm guessing too, when you're doing that, because you're taking pre-packaged channels, you to some extent you have to take what's on offer. So even things with news, it's more difficult to localize that if you're taking international news channels. I mean, even within Ghana, obviously you've got quite a few different language blocks, cultural areas that their definition of news and current affairs might be different. Does that lead you to think that maybe things like news, current affairs are better suited to social media, and it's easier just to go with a generic news feed that fills in the rest of the gaps?
No, relevance is key. So, you know, yes, it may be easy to pick feed and plant on a platform, but people want to identify with, especially news and current affairs, it's about information, informing them, educating them, getting them to be on top of issues. So relevance is very, very important. Timeliness is also very important. And that's not something you will get from already prepared feed. So you have to do, and we do a lot of own content production. So we have a channel that is called Joy News, which is modeled along the BBC and CNN 24-hour news content. And we do about 80% of our own news production. So we have people out there gathering news and programming and scheduling to meet the needs of our audience. And then we put in content from other international news feed as and when, based on arrangements that we have, to fill the gaps around what is happening in the international arena. But people really want to know what is happening around them and what is relevant to them. And that is what sets us apart when it comes to how we build the channels. So again,
is that easier for you, Ken, in as much as you're very Ghanaian focused, whereas I don't know how you, Craig, would be able to do something like that, given that you are SSA? Well, not focused. You can't focus on such a wide area.
Well, we have a Hausa movie channel called Cinema Hausa, which the Hausa speakers across many West African countries. We have a Swahili channel called Bongo TV, again, which is a language that cuts across the region. And we intend to have more. And of course, we have our Afriwood blockbusters. A lot of those are West African movies from Ghana, Nigeria, but also from Kenya, from Zambia, from South Africa. Zimbabwe produces quite a lot of movies, actually. And the same with our series. So yes, some are highly focused and linguistic and therefore very regional, but others are compilations of best of breed from across the region.
Yeah. Just one question about education. Is this a passing phase because of Corona, or have we now found another streak of gold to rival Manchester City and Manchester United as being drivers for audiences on television?
I believe it's here to stay. I don't think it's a new thing. I think that enough educational material hasn't been there. Ken said he saw it cause a huge spike in boxes, and I think that it's a reflection of the fact that Africans like content that improves their lives and contributes to their prospects in life, and education is so important to African audiences generally. So so my view is that it's a very important content sector, and I'll be interested to hear if Ken can add to that. He obviously has seen good results from it.
Ken, and what's your view on it? Obviously, I don't know if you consciously got into education. It sounds as if you just happened to be in the right place at the right time, but is it now a major driver for your business, the educational side?
Well, I mean, to start with, I'm aligned with Craig on his submission on educational content, but for us, not for money. It's a CSR project that we're doing with our partners. But the key thing, again, as Craig said, is that relevance is important here. And when you give people what is relevant to them, they will tap into it and go with you. And at the baseline of it is the fact that it is a recruitment baseline. So you use it besides serving its core purpose, also use it to recruit audience onto the platform. And so that is the minimum. And then you get a box in home, and then you get people you want to tap into also to now log onto the platform. So you are serving 2 or 3 purposes in there. You are getting young audience recruited. You are giving parents and the young audience what they want, what serves their need at that point in time. And then over time, you get them to also get hooked onto other content that you have on the platform. And that is what we are doing with the educational content. But primarily, it is to give the young audience that educational content need that is critical now.
Now, when you're looking at that young audience, Do you have to reflect that in the way that you present the content, given that in a sense they've not been brought up on the 2-3 hour blockbuster film or whatever. So both for educational content and for general entertainment, they're used to now a different type of format, and they're watching it maybe on their phones as well. So to keep them onto your service, do you now necessarily need to change the way you format your content?
Yes, for the educational content, yes. You know, we did a survey about a couple of months ago to understand how well it is going, and interactivity came up tops. Kids saying, "Look, we want to get interactive. Sorry, yes, TV to speak to you, but with educational content, we want to feedback. We want to speak back to TV." And so we have to set up a whole system where they can, you know, send their questions, answer questions, you know, model the classroom environment on TV. And that is what they want. Yes, they want to access the content on digital platforms, but the fact also remains that there are many homes where access to, you know, data and all those are not so available. So linear TV is still critical, backed by DTH. So then do it or serve as the content in a way that becomes relevant to us. And that is a huge part of being interactive. So we have to model the content to meet their specific need. Yeah.
Craig, is that one of the reasons that you also have got an OTT delivery channel as well as your free-to-air satellite?
Well, yes. Firstly, I think that interactivity, the demand for interactivity emanates from digital engagement initially, and therefore there's a demand even on conventional TV. There's lots of second screen stuff going on, and there are apps available now where people can interact on their phone screen, and it can then reflect in the graphics on the main screen, you know, whether it's for voting or asking questions or social media or comments and things like that. Our foray into digital media or, you know, rendering our services on OTT, it's not so much a question of, as you put it, hedging your bets, or, you know, like, but more a recognition of the fact that in the modern media age, there are multiple platforms through which content can be consumed. And so we as channel creators, I mean, we don't just create channels as, you know, flavors of ice cream. They are content brands that speak to a tribe who are interested in that particular genre or subject matter of content. And they want to consume that content across a range of platforms that they engage with on a regular basis. And some of those are social media platforms, but it could be web. Of course, it could be conventional TV, which doesn't have a data cost and is on a big screen. And so I think that in the modern age, one needs to recognize that and render one's material formats appropriately for each platform.
And does that aid or get in the way of the commercialization of the service? Because in the last 10 minutes that we have here, I just wanted to move towards the financial well-being of free-to-air. And do you see this now as being an additional or an easier revenue stream for you?
Well, it's automatically measured, so that's pretty nice, isn't it? In an environment where measurement is a problem. That's not to say that we have to crack the audience measurement nut, you know, north of South Africa for sure anyway. But yes, it offers targeting, which is extremely helpful, as well as measurement. It's not just that you get measurements of what was viewed, you actually display your ads to the people you want to reach based on some kind of metric. So I think that that's helpful. I think it's also helpful to be able to offer an advertiser a range of products. So you can offer banners, you can offer social media, you can offer embedded content in brands into content, as well as your conventional spots and programmatic buying. So I think it makes the commercial environment richer. It obviously adds some complexity, but I think at the end of the day, it's a good thing. It brings more opportunity to us.
Are you finding that advertisers are moving away from the traditional spot model and doing more for branding programs, branding channels even?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think digital media has driven that. You know, it sort of started in YouTube and it's kind of working its way out. So I didn't mention in my intro that we now produce a lot of content. I think we will have produced, you know, sort of like 25 series of television by the end of this year in between North America and Africa. And some of those, before they've even been bought, they have generated very substantial sponsorship payments, purely because we utilize certain brands within the show. So yeah, and there's no guarantee of the reach. So that sounds impossible. I said it was impossible before it happened, but it's happened, and we're busy trying to do it again on another series. Watch the space. Yeah.
So Ken, what's your view on advertising and your ability to tap into that? Because as Craig said, you're sitting right in the middle of an area where audience measurement is problematic at best. How are you able to convince advertisers that they should spare some money to come with you?
Well, I mean, it's much easier when you have a robust audience measurement tool, you know, that gives you the kind of detail you need, and you can zoom in directly as an advertiser to put your funds on the platform. So at a point, it gets into a try and error space, you know, but immersion also helps, where we are able to prove to advertisers that, look, when you go around, these are the channels that people are watching, and these are the channels that people are talking about, and we are there. And so we want you to place your resources there. What we do also is to use the power of our platforms. And so, yes, we have TV, we have strong radio brands, and we have strong social media brands. So I think Craig made the point made this point along the line, where we are using all the assets, you know, to support an advertiser and their brand to move forward. Because now audience overlap and they sit almost everywhere. It is difficult to say, look, my target audience only sits here or sits there. They are everywhere during the day. So how are you meeting them and engaging them every day along the line? But the backside of it is how in Ghana, for instance, how the general economy is performing. You know, as free to air, you are feeding from the P&L or the residual, for want of a better word, of some of these businesses. And so you can do well only as they do well. So what is driving their well-being? It could be well outside your power or your capacity. This could be bigger blocks of issues in policy regimes, bigger economic issues as COVID that has just hit everybody, things that you have no control over, right? That impact on the economies of these advertisers and how that then also affects you. So we always have to scan around and see new businesses, new opportunities, but importantly, even those that are struggling, how do we help them cut through and improve their branding and their positioning and their business, even in difficult situations. So it is not just doing the content and putting it out there and grabbing the audience, but it is also now slicing it and making it more unique, specific, and relevant to the advertisers, and working with the advertisers along their business journeys to see how they can also become better day by day, so they can spend more on your platforms. So as a media organization, you have to do far more than just putting out content and walking away.
Absolutely, and we haven't really had the time to discuss it, but is DTT a threat, or is it just part of the landscape and that we all live with it? Do you see it a threat, Ken?
I wouldn't say it's a threat. I mean, we've seen it in Ghana. Currently the DTT channel can take 40 channels, and the bouquet is full already. But what you see is a lot of the channels on DTT are on DTH. DTT is still driving penetration, and so you have to be on DTH to reach that audience that you want to get to. So it is not a threat. I wouldn't say it is a threat. For an operator, I would say rather that it is an additional cost, because now you may have to sit on 2 platforms instead of 1. You would have loved to sit on only 1 and you are fine. Now you have to sit on 2. Maybe then at a point you have to sit on 3. It is just cutting the platform into pieces, but it is not a threat, so to speak. Especially to the extent that the same channels on DTT are those that are sitting on DTH.
Yeah, I can see you nodding, Craig. So I'm just going to ask both of you guys one last question as we come to the end. If data was suddenly to become free overnight and connectivity wasn't an issue, is there still a future for free-to-air via satellite? Craig?
If data was free, we would have a situation where half of the population still couldn't consume content over that free data, because the penetration of high-speed broadband is not viable beyond the high-density population areas. So for that reason, I see satellite having a very, very long relevance in that regard.
Great. And Ken, the last word from you. Would you echo that?
Exactly. The ubiquitous nature of satellite is like that, you can't beat now. It may be sometime in the future, but not in this horizon we're looking into.
So from both of you, we started with an optimistic point of view about FTA and satellite distribution. We're going to end on that optimistic note. You're both going to end up getting even richer than you are at the moment, which is good news. But hopefully to carry on educating the audience in Africa and providing them with the entertainment that they need. So on behalf of everybody listening, thanks very much, both of you, for contributing. I'm sorry we didn't get around to answering all of the questions that we got, but never mind. Hopefully we covered a lot of the ground. So to you two, thank you very much. Ken, thank you, Craig. To the audience, thank you for listening, and to everybody, have a great day going forward. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Reese. Thanks, Ken.
Yes.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you, Craig.
Yes.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everyone.
Bye.